All right, Rabbi, say good morning, Alichtig Chanukah. We are beginning today, Meretz Hashem, new Mishnah, beginning by thanking all of our sponsors, to thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Kislev, to thank Josh and Becca Friedman for dedicating all the Shurim and Drashos this month. Le'ilui Nishmas Josh's father, Yisrael Yehuda Ben Rafael Zichron Livracha. To thank Sammy and Malka Esterson for dedicating the Shurim this month in memory of their parents, Yitzchak Leib ben haKohen, Sarah Rachel bas Baruch Avraham, Hinda bas Henoch Efraim, and in the schus of the continued Gesundheit and Hatzlacha, Mr. Morton Esterson, Admea ve'esrim shanim tovos. And to thank the Pepper family for dedicating the Shurim this month in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Shmuel's brother Yosef Pepper, Yosef Dovid Ben Yaakov. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah and their families in Nechama. And with that, let us begin. So today's daf is Nun Hey 55, and we are in Meretz Hashem picking up at the Mishnah on the top of Nun Hey Amud Aleph. Hanoda min hadagan. So we'll say, so really some beautiful Gemara today, actually. It's a really beautiful Gemara. So Hanoda min hadagan. So remember again, continuing along our same theme, whereby again we're talking about a person goes out and makes a neder, employing a certain lashon, a certain either word, phrase. And so again, the shaila is how to interpret that particular word or phrase in the context of the neder. Obviously, the overarching principle that's guiding all of these discussions is Nedarim, holchin achar lashon bnei adam. When it comes to Nedarim, we always follow the way that people speak. So let's go. Says the Gemara, Hanoda min hadagan. If a person goes ahead and makes a neder not to eat dagan. Now I will say, here's what's interesting. Generally, right, when we speak about dagan, we assume what does dagan refer to? Grain. Here's what's interesting, is the actual etymology of dagan is something that is piled. Something that is piled, heaped together. So therefore, hanoda min hadagan, if a person goes ahead and makes a neder not to consume dagan, what's the halacha? Asr b'pula mitzri yavish. He's not permitted to eat these dried pula mitzri, Egyptian lentils. If you take a quick look at the Rush, so the Rush, I will say, in the right hand side column says, Asr b'pula mitzri yavish, the dagan komini de midgan mashma. The word dagan ultimately refers to anything that is normally assembled in a pile. Sha'osim mimeru kri. You go ahead and you make a pile from it. V'anodim min hadagan asr b'chol minei kitnius sha'osim mehen kri. So we'll say, interestingly enough, dagan could refer to grain, but interestingly enough, dagan could also refer to legumes. Because it refers to anything when, and again, in the process of being, or in its being processed, is put into a pile. So therefore, the Mishnah says pretty much it will include all of these things besides pula mitzri. The pula mitzri itself was not normally put into a pile. Div Rabbi Meir. These words of Rabbi Meir. The Chacham on the other hand say no. Eino aser ela bechameshes haminin. The Chacham on the other hand say that no. Dagan actually refers to the 5 types of grain. So we'll say, I want to show you what's at play over here, which is really quite interesting. So first of all, the 5 types of grain. Take a look at the first Rashi. Chita, saora, kusmin, shifon, shiboles, shual. Wheat, barley, spelt, oats, and rye. 5 types of grain. So we'll say, so interestingly enough, what's at play over here? So according to Rabbi Meir, literally, he's taking a literal definition of dagan. Dagan means anything that's been piled. So therefore, again, it pretty much includes wheat. It also includes any type of form of legume, if it's piled, as opposed to pula mitzri. Chacham say no, that's not how people use dagan. People use dagans as a reference to grain, specifically again the 5 types of grain. Incredible. Right? Meir says, "Hanodra min hatvua." Now watch this. What if a person goes out and makes a neder not to consume tvua? Now remember, tvua is a much more specific word that actually means grain. So what's the halacha? Eino aser ela mechameshes haminin. He's only aser to consume the 5 different types of grain. Aval anodim min hadagan aser bakol umuter bapero sa'ilan ubiyarak. So we'll see, interesting. So Rabbi Meir comes along again, and he says, but a person who goes in and makes a ned. So again, according to Rabbi Meir, we'll say, so here's what's interesting. When first Mishnah started talking about dagan, so Rabbi Meir understands dagan pretty much refers to anything that's piled. Chacham say no, dagan only refers to wheat. According to Rabbi Meir, what refers to wheat? The use of the word tvua. Tvua refers to wheat. But ultimately, again, a person makes an neder from Dagon, that will answer everything pretty much other than Peros, Sa'ilan, and Yarek. Ultimately, fruits of the tree and vegetables which are not normally collected in piles. Incredible. So we'll say, let's go right there. Lememra, so let's analyze. Lememra, did Dagon called the midgon mashma. So we'll say, what's coming out from this Gemara, or what's coming out from the Mishnah, is that the lotion of Dagon, as much as we would have thought before we saw this Mishnah, I always thought Dagon was just another word to use for grain, but the direct etymology of Dagon is anything that's piled. Anything that's piled. So the Gemara says, Kol midi de midgon mashma. Is that true? Massive Rav Yosef, but Rav Yosef raises a kasha. It was actually very interesting. Massive Rav Yosef, so we'll say, the Gemara now quotes over here from the pasuk of Divrei Hayamim. V'chifrotz had davar, as the matter became public, Hirbu b'nei Yisrael reishes Dagon tirosh v'yitzar udvash v'chol tevuas sadeh u'meiser hakol larov heviu. So before we translate the pasuk, let's just give a little bit of context. Take a look at the Ran. So the Ran about on the left-hand side, 3 lines into the Ran, on the top, on the wide lines. So kifrotz hadavar. So remember again, as we translate before, kifrotz hadavar means as the matter became public, matter became well known. What matter became public? So here the Ran says, Mikru b'divrei hayamim. This is a pasuk in divrei hayamim. Divimei Chizkiya lo hayu zrizin lahafish trumos u'maisrus. It's actually quite interesting. In the days of Chizkiya, it became known that people were becoming lax in the separation of trumas and maisrus, which I will say is very interesting because the days of Chizkiya were a spiritual heyday for Klal Yisrael. The Gemara says there was so much Talmud Torah, so much learning, that everyone, even women, children, knew the halachos of Tum and Tara. And everyone saying, you know what that means? You know what happens in Daf Yomi when we get to a sugya of Tum and Tara? Right? Let's be honest, not everybody's exactly perking up, right? That's the complicated halachos. So again, there was such a scholarship in the days of Chizkiyahu that everyone knew the halachos of Tum and Tara. Yet, interestingly enough, there was a certain laxity that happened with tithing. So what happens? So again, this is incredible. So the Ran says, Amad Chizkiyahu v'tikin she'aviu osam beis Hashem. So Chizkiyahu essentially, made a clap on the bima. He's like, all right, let's go. We got to start going ahead and bringing Trumas and Maestros again. And to their credit, Uksiv, Ukifrot Sadavar, Shinischaska, Vigavra, Takanasa, Shachizkiyahu. So we'll say, amazing if it worked. The people responded. We'll say, the great Musar is people at their core are good. At our core are good. And even when we're not doing the right thing, so most times if you just point it out to a person in the right way, with the right sensitivities, and with love, not admonishment, that what they're doing is not correct, more often than not, people will, Emeretz Hashem, come through. So Chizkiyahu says, guys, we got to bring Trumas Maestros. So they bring it. Now here's what's interesting about this. So the pasuk says, listen to the pasuk, Kifrot Sadavar, so when the matter became known, i.e. Chizkiyahu told the people, we have to be better about bringing Trumas and Maestros. So what happened? So the pasuk says, Hirbu b'nei Yisrael. So Klal Yisrael went ahead and they didn't just bring, but like they brought a lot. So Hirbu b'nei Yisrael, Reishis Dagon. So they went ahead and they brought the beginning, right from the first of their Dagon, Tirosh, v'yitzhar, grapes, olives, v'chol tevuas sadeh larov. Right? And everything, all of the grain of the field. Now watch this. V'i amrit Dagon called the midgon mashma. Rabbi say, if you hold that Dagon actually means what? Anything that's piled, then my ukifro sadavar. So we'll say, really what the Gemara is asking is like this. If you have Dagon, then why do you need the phrase tevuas hasodah? Right? Remember again, what does tevuas hasodah mean? What does tevuas hasodah mean? The grain of the field. But one second. If Dagon means anything that's piled, what's included in anything that's piled? What's included in that? Grain of the field. So it's redundant. The Gemara is asking a kasha. You're telling me that Dagon ultimately again refers to anything that's piled, and that should include tevuas hasodah. So why does the pasuk have to be redundant? Amrabaye la suye peras ha'ilan v'yarek. No, because we'll say what is coming to include ultimately again is even what? Even fruits of the tree and vegetables. Rashi says, the Ran says over here, la suye peras in v'yarek she'ein osin dagan mehen. So we'll say, interestingly enough, so tevuas hasodah, interestingly enough, is also coming to include not just wheat, but even fruits and vegetables. That's how extensive their tithing practices were. I will say, normally again, there's not necessarily tithing on fruits and vegetables, certain fruits and vegetables. So interesting enough, they still brought. Good. So therefore the pasuk says it's not redundant. Whereas dagan does refer to everything that is piled. Tevuas hasad in this context comes to include even fruits and vegetables. Incredible. So good, let's go back there. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Meir Omer hanodim min hatvua, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, hakomodim benodim min hatvua, she'ein aser ela mechameshes haminim. So we'll see, here we go. Rabbi Yochanan says, even though there's a machlokes by dagan, right? What does dagan mean? Does dagan mean dafka grain? Does dagan mean anything that's piled? Okay, so whereas there's a machlokes by dagan, there's no machlokes by tvua. If a person says, I take a neder not to eat tvua, what does that refer to? Chameshes haminim, 5 species of grain, right? Wheat, barley, oat, spelt, and rye. That's what it means. That supports this. Shavin benodim in atvua she'in asr ela behei haminim. Person, right? Bryce that says that if a person makes a neder not to eat tvua, everyone agrees that he's only usher to eat the 5 species of grain. So pshita. So the Gemara says that, okay, that's obvious. Well, what I have thought otherwise. Ma'al tvua kol mili mashma. So I will say, this is quite interesting. The Gemara says the halamina is, I would have thought that maybe tvua comes to include everything. Everything. I will say, now why would you think that tvua comes to go ahead and include everything? So again, if you take a look at the Ran, so the Ran, I will say, almost right across in the Ran. Actually, no, not really. Yeah, right across in like 10 lines up. Right? So ma'od detema, tvua kol mili mashma, the Ran says, mitargaminon alalta, va'alalta mashma kol mili kidarminu lakam. I will say, so we're going to see this in just a little bit. Here's what's fascinating. The Targum, the Aramaic translation of the word tvua, ultimately again is alalta. That's the Aramaic word. We're going to see that alalta actually means everything. Everything. So the havamina is, I would have thought that when a person makes a neder not to eat tvua, perhaps they're coming to prohibit everything. Kamash malon, no, that tvua ultimately means chamishes minei dagan, the 5 types of grain. So the Gemara says, Kamash malon, tolo mashma komili. Good. So we'll say, so we're defining our terms. Remember again, so far we have dagan, refers to anything that's piled. Right? Tvua, as we stand now, is going to go ahead and refer to 5 different types of grain. Right? The havamina, that tvua might have meant something more, was because the Targum, right, the Aramaic translation of the word tvua is alalta, and alalta we're going to see, here's what we'll say, tvua translates as alalta, but alalta, fascinatingly enough, doesn't seem to translate as tvua. Right? Alalta could be used in a different context to mean everything. To mean everything. Again, as we'll see in just a moment. So Maser Rav Yosef, raised the kasha, ukifrots hadavar hirbu b'nei Yisrael. So we'll say, so now listen to this. Here's the problem. What did we just do, I will say, right before Abath, right? Remember again, when we started this, we brought a question from the Pasuk in Divrei Yom. What was the question? That the Pasuk seems redundant. The Pasuk says they brought Trumas and Maisos from what? From Dagan and Kol Tevuas Hasada. So we'll say, so we said over there that what did Tevuas Hasada include? What did it include? Fruits and vegetables. But here you're saying that what does Tevua include? What is Tevua? 5 types of grain. So which one is it? To which the Gemara says, no, it's not a kasha. The Gemara says, Amarava, Tevua l'chod, Tevuas Sada l'chod. Rava said it's 2 different things. Rava said there's Tevua and there's Tevuas Hasada. Tevua by itself refers to 5 types of grain. 5 types of grain. Tevuas Hasada is a more expansive term that can come to include not only grain, but what? Fruits and vegetables as well. We should both say, again, it's a logical answer, right? Because that extra word sada, field, is obviously coming to include something additional. Incredible. So listen to this story. Bar Mar Shmuel, Pakid Delisnun Tleiser Alfi Zuzi L'Rava. Supposed to listen to this. So Bar Mar Shmuel, supposed to say the son of Mar Shmuel. Okay, son of Mar Shmuel said he left in his last will and testament. Pakid Delisnun Tleiser Alfi Zuzi L'Rava. He wanted 13,000 zuzim left to Rava, and he wanted Rava to collect it min alalta dinahar panya. This was the tzibur, right? This was the last one testament. I'm leaving 13,000 zuzim to Rava to be collected from the Alalta in Nahar Panya. Now, Nahar Panya is a place. So collected from the Alalta in Nahar Panya. Okay, so we'll say, what's the problem here? What's the problem? What's Alalta? Right? What is the... Obviously, again, Mar Bar Shmuel is not just simply leaving money, right? He's leaving a financial amount to be collected in a specific way. So what's the Alalta? So Shalcha Rava lekamed Rav Yosef. So Rava said the following before Yosef. First of all, take a look at the Ran. The Ran says, Barmar Ashmuel Pakid Alalta Hechi Mikra Shelo Haya Lo Rava Lito Ela Me Alalta Sheyichet Lo Bar Mar Shmuel. So remember again, what Mar Bar Shmuel was saying is like this. He designated something specific, or I should say, he designated a specific collection for Rava. Right? So in other words, Rava just didn't have the ability to collect whatever he wanted. His collection was limited to something very specific. So what happened? Shalcha Rava lekamed Rav Yosef. So we'll say, so Rava sent before Rav Yosef the following kasha. Alalta hechi mikarya. So what's Alalta? Right, ultimately again, what is Alalta? So Amar Rav Yosef, Masnisinhi, it's a Mishnah. V'shavin benoda minat tvua she'ein aser ela mechamesha saminin. Supposed to now watch this. What did Rav Yosef respond? Here's what's interesting. Rav Yosef responded with our Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? That everyone agrees that if you make a neder not to eat tvua, what can't you eat? What can't you eat? From the 5 species of grain. They both say, how is Rav Yosef answering the question? Because essentially what Rav Yosef is saying is, what's Alalta? What's Alalta? Tvua. Tvua. Allah, because remember, Rav Yosef, as we said before, how do you translate Tvua? What's the Targum? Right? What's the Aramaic translation of Tvua? Alalta. So therefore, Rav Yosef is essentially saying, listen, Rava, it's clear. He left you, how much was it? He left you 13,000, right? 13,000 zuz of Tvua, of grain, to be collected in Nahar Panya. Okay, incredible. Amalei Abaye says, 1 second, Rav Yosef. Mi dami tvua lo mashma ela mechamesha saminin. Alalta kol mili mashma. So this is what we mentioned before. One of these interesting things where although tvua, we got it, we translate it as alalta, but alalta doesn't necessarily have to translate as tvua. So Abaye says, 1 second. Again, Rav Yosef, how do you know that? Again, tvua is a very limited term, referring to chamesha saminin. I understand that alalta can be the translation of tvua, but tvua is not necessarily the translation of alalta. So what's going on over here? So we'll say second wide line. Adrua lekamed Rava. So we'll say, so remember again, just so you're following the flow over here, right? Mar Bar Shmuel dies, or leaves in his will, 13,000 zuzim of alalta from Nahar Panya to Rava. Right? Rava gets this, Mazel Tov. I mean, not Mazel, Mar Bar Shmuel passed away, but Mazel. There is an interesting discussion in general when a person passes away. Let's say Reuven dies and Shimon gets a large Yerusha. So the halacha is he has to say Baruch Dayan MS on the death of Reuven, but he also has to say again either the bracha of Hatov HaMeitiv or Shechianu on the Yerusha. So sometimes there are situations in life where there's a Dayan MS and a Shechianu at the same time. And anyway, so the Gemara says as follows. So just to follow the flow. So now Rava gets this money. He just doesn't know what alalta is. He sends it to Rav Yosef, right? Rav Yosef says, no problem, you already learned this. What's alalta? Tevua. Abaye says, hold up. How do you know how to translate it that way? At the end of the day, I understand Tevua translated as alalta, but alalta is a much more expansive term, could mean a whole bunch of different things. So how do you know that it refers to Tevua? To which the Gemara says, Adrua lekamed Rava. So we'll say second wide line. So all of this whole discussion came back to Rava. Amar ha lo kami baili da'alalta kol mili mashma. So Rava says, I understand. I really didn't have a question. I understand that alalta really means everything. Alalta means everything. If you look at the Ran says, alalta kol mili mashma, da'alalta loshon bia v'hachnosa v'shavach. So we'll say alalta is really like another word for like kol, for everything. Anything that appreciates, anything that has a value. So the Gemara says, how to do di baili? So Rava says, this was my question. So in other words, Rava is saying, alalta really means everything. And what Rava was saying is like this, when Mar Bar Shmuel left me 13,000 zuz of alalta in Nar Panya, what he was really saying was, you could collect 13,000 zuz of goods. What type of goods? Any type of goods. From my estate in Nar Panya. But what is the question? Hadi Baili, schar batim uschar svinos. Am I allowed to collect from rentals of homes, and from rentals of boats? So apparently Mar Bar Avashi owned real estate, he owned homes, right, rental homes. He also owned boats, and the homes and the boats were rented out. So Rava says, my question is, can I collect my alalka ultimately again from rental income of boats or of homes? Why? What's the shaila? Mi amrinon kevan depachsan lav alaltihi. So this is very interesting. Maybe because both homes and boats depreciate, so by definition, maybe alalta only refers to items that don't have an inherent depreciation, but real estate and boats have inherent depreciation. So maybe I can't collect from those. On the flip side, Odilma, kevan de lo yadia pachasayu alaltihi. On the flip side, maybe because the appreciation is not necessarily visible or discernible, so it's still called alalta, and therefore I should be able to collect from those items. So I will say, so this is interesting. So it turns out Rava knew what alalta was. He didn't have a question about alalta. He knew that alalta really refers to anything that has a value associated with it. And therefore, again, he knew that he is entitled to collect from any property that Mar Bar Avashi owned in Nar Panya. He had a very specific shaila about rental income from homes and from boats. So the Gemara says, let's listen to this. So now this whole conversation got back to Rav Yosef. And I remember again how this conversation started. Mar Bar Avashi leaves 13,000 zuz of alalta to Rava. Rava sends a question to Rav Yosef. What was the question to Rav Yosef? What was the question? What is alalta? This sparked the whole conversation. Rav Yosef gave an answer. It means tivua. Abaye says, no, it can't mean tivua. That's too limiting. Comes back to Rava. Rava says, no. I know what alalta was. I was asking a more specific question. So this came back to Rav Yosef. So Amar, Amai Shalachlan. So Rav Yosef says, why is Rava wasting my time? In other words, if he already knows the answer, and he had a more specific question, then why is he asking? Ikbid Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef got upset. Rav Yosef said, now why did Rav Yosef get upset? Rav Yosef felt that there was a lack of derech eretz. In other words, if you know the answer to your question, and you're asking something specific, either don't ask, or ask what you mean. Or ask what you mean. Why are you drinking a cup over here? In other words, why are you asking me things that you're not really... In other words, you know that I hold a specific definition. You hold a different definition. If you already have your own definition, don't ask me mine. Rav Yosef got upset. Rav Yosef said, now, it's interesting, by the way. It's interesting, this doesn't exactly seem to be such a reason to get upset. So Rav say, why is there a reason to get upset over here? So Rav say, I think it's pshat like this. If a person truly values time, see, we like to say we value time, but to be honest, often we waste a lot of it. And if I waste a lot of it, it means that I don't truly treasure it. If you really value time, then you account for how you use every single minute. Every single minute, at least every single hour, right? Every single minute. I think what's happening is like this. If Yosef says, listen, I'm happy to utilize my time to help someone. But Lamaisa, if I'm going to give you my time, then you owe it to me to not waste it. And Rav Yosef felt over here, again, Rava, you didn't need me. So if you didn't need me, the time that I spent doing this is time that I could have spent doing something else. So perhaps a regular person would not have had a right to get angry in such a situation. But a person like Rav Yosef, who clearly utilized, you don't become a Rav Yosef if you don't utilize your time wisely, felt that his time was misused. And I both say, the tragedy of wasted time is you can never regain it. I was about to say, if you waste money, you can make more money. Right? A lot of things that you waste in life, you can always regain. Wasted time is the one thing that you can never recapture. So Rav Yosef says, Shama Rava. So Rava heard now that Rav Yosef was upset. So what does Rava say? Great story. So listen to this. So Rava came before Rav Yosef on Erev Yom Kippur. Now I will say, why is he coming to Rav Yosef on Erev Yom Kippur? That's what I will say. By the way, this Gemara happens to be one of the Makoros for the concept that if you wronged someone, ben Adam lechavero, it is important to ask for mechila. In other words, if you wronged someone, it is important to ask for mechila on Erev Yom Kippur. One of the sources for it. So Ashkechei, listen to this. Ashkechei l'shamei dahava kamazik kamei kasa dechamra. So Rava comes along and he sees that Rav Yosef's servant was mixing for him a glass of wine. Right? We have this like in every single, certainly as we come across in every single sugya. We'll say, remember again, they had wine concentrate. They had wine concentrate. So what happens? He had a couple of barrels of wine concentrate. He would take some concentrate and dilute it with water. So Rava comes and he sees that Rav Yosef's servant is making him water. Fine. Amrlei havli de imzaglei. Oh no. So we'll say, Yavlei v'kamazayu kasa dechamra. So Rav Yosef said to the servant, please, let me make Rav Yosef's cup of wine. Okay. The servant said, sure. Gives it to Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef makes the cup of wine. Kigashes and say, now, here's the part of this where the Gemara doesn't say, but as soon as we know, Rav Yosef was blind. Rav Yosef was blind. So watch this. So Rava comes. Now remember, Rava has not announced his arrival. Right? So no one knows that he's there except the servant. So Kigashasi, when Rav Yosef is given the cup of wine to drink, Amar, Hadin Mizga, Dami lemizga derava berei Rav Yosef Barchama. So listen to this. Rav Yosef said, this dilution ratio, this tastes like a cup of wine from Rava. Now, which is an incredible thing, and we know this, that when a person is lacking one sense, right, the other senses become heightened, right, in an attempt to compensate. So Rav Yosef apparently had a very acute sense of taste. So what happens? So again, he was able to taste the dilution. This is the dilution of Rava. So Amrale hunihu. So Rava says, it's me. Amrale lo tesiv ad akarech ad da amrit le pirusha dade nosa. So Rav Yosef says, Rava, don't sit down until you tell me the pshat in this pasuk. So Rav Yosef wants Rava to take a pshat. We'll say, what's the pasuk? Mai dichsiv umi midbar matana umi matana nachli el. Bamos. So we'll say, so again, in Chumash Devarim, Torah is talking about all the places we went. We'll say, here's the problem. It's actually, Rashi points this out in Bamidbar. Rashi also points this out extensively right in the beginning of Devarim. They will say, the Torah sometimes gives us the name of places, but yet when we try to look geographically at the Klal Yisrael traveled in during their 40-year sojourn in the desert, Peter will say, when you go and you try to find these places, they don't exist. So sometimes we'll say what we pick up on is when the Torah appears to give me names of locations, it's not really giving me names of locations. Instead, what is it giving me? Some type of coded message. So this is what Rav Yosef is asking of Rava. There's no such places. So what is the Torah coming to teach? So we'll say, this is incredible. This is so beautiful. Amar lei. So Rava said, here's the pshat. Kevan sha'osa adam es atzmo kemidbar shumufkar lakol. When a person makes himself like a desert, that he's mufkar lakol. Literally again, that he's hefkar. Then I was saying, here's what's interesting. The Rush says over here, if you take a look at what I was saying, the right hand side column in the Rush, the last line in the Rush, mufkar lakol, lilmod Torah lakol. Now I will say, the Rush understands that mufkar lakol means he makes himself hefkar, and that'll teach Torah to anyone who wants it from him. Right? In other words, according to the Rush, what it's saying is like this. Instead of me going ahead and keeping my Torah to myself, saying that my Torah is mine, someone who makes his Torah hefker lakol. My Torah is here for anyone who wants it. Ultimately, again, nitna lo b'matana. Torah is given to him as a gift. In other words, we'll say, if you take your spiritual gifts, you take the Torah that you acquire, and you freely give it to others, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, just like you're taking that which is yours, and you're giving it freely as a gift to others, Hashem says, I'll give even more to you as a gift. I'll give more to you. So I was like, it could also mean, I think Pasha Pshat in this is, person who makes himself kamidbar, lakol, we'll say it also means humility. The desert is humble. The desert represents humility. So a person who humbles himself, he receives Torah as a gift from Hashem. Because Rabbi say humility, it's really one and the same. Because a person, Rabbi say, who gives up his Torah freely to others recognizes, my Torah is not mine. My spiritual accomplishments are not mine. They're there to share with others. That's humility. So a person who makes himself humble, a person who recognizes that at the end of the day, I will say, my life is not about me. My life is not about me. My life is about what I can do for the other. My life is about what I can do for the cloud. That's what life is about. You think your life is to make yourself happy? Your life is to acquire things for yourself? My life is about everything that I could do for the cloud. A person who makes himself like a desert like that, makes himself hefker. What do you mean hefker? I own nothing, meaning everything I have is for you. Everything I have is to do for you. Everything I have is to give to you. Everything as I have is to lift you up. That's my Torah, that's my other spiritual resources. A person makes himself hefker like a desert. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to that person, I'll give you Torah. I'll give you Torah. I'll give you Torah as a gift. So beautiful. Mufkar l'kol Torah nitlob matan. Shnei Amar. What's the pshat? Umi midbar. Person makes it like a midbar. Matana. He gets Torah spirituality. He gets, I will say, such an incredible yesod. You make yourself humble in life. And humility as expressed by a willingness to take your own spiritual gifts and share them with anyone and everyone. Hashem says the reward for that is I'll give you more ruchnius. I'll give you more Torah, ultimately as a gift. And once you receive a gift of spirituality from Hashem, nachalo el, you become the inheritance of Hashem. Shnei Amar, omi matana, nachli el. I will say, those who receive gifts from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when I recognize now that the more I give, the more I get, I recognize that I have this direct relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am the nachala. I am the inheritance. I am the portion of the Ribono Shel Olam. V'cheiva shenachalu el, o l'gdola. And I will say, ultimately, again, when I become the portion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's when I experience personalistic greatness in life. Suddenly again, I'm actualizing my potential. Right? I'm running on all cylinders. Oh, I rise to greatness. Shnei Amar, o minach li'el, bamos. I will say, bamos means the heights. The heights. Here's the problem. But then I run the risk of getting a bit too carried away with myself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashpilo. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings me down. Shnei Amar, omi bamos hagai. Right, I could come from the heights into the valley. If you get too carried away with yourself, ultimately the Moshe brings me back down. V'la'od, ela sheshokin osa bekarka. Not only that, but sometimes again when I experience a fall, I fall even lower than I was before. Shnei Amar, v'nishkafa al pnei hayishimon. Literally, again, he will be seen. I will say, again, it's above our play on words. Instead of saying v'nishkafa, it's v'nishka'a. Ultimately, again, sink into the plains. Vim chozerbo. And ultimately, again, if I do tshuva, HaKadosh Baruch Hu magbio. Hashem will lift me back up. Amadei Shnei Amar, kol gei hinasei. Right? Ultimately, again, kol gei hinasei, anyone who is low will be lifted up. I will say, actually, interestingly enough, that last part is a totally different pasuk. Right? That last part is not in Bamidbar. That last part is in Yeshaya. But it's a progression. So we'll say, Sabbaday, if you just look at the pasuk in Bamidbar, it's incredible. So listen to the text of the pasuk. Midbar, the person humbles himself, makes himself like a midbar, ultimately recognizing that everything he has is to give and to benefit the other. Matana. You'll get more ruchnius from Hashem. And if you get more ruchnius from Hashem, mimatana nachliel. You become the portion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Minachliel, once you become the portion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you will experience unprecedented growth. Bamos. But at the end of the day, again, if you get too carried away with your bamos, then what? Omi bamos hagai. Ultimately, you can be taken down into the valley. Right, you could be lowered, and sometimes again, when you fall as a result of gaiva, v'nishkafa al pnei hayishimon, you could fall to unprecedented depths. But lest you think that once you fall, redemption is impossible, then again, Rava brought in this pasuk from Yeshaya, kol gei hinasei. No matter how low you are in life, there is always the ability to rebound. So that's the end of the discussion between Rav Yosef and Rava. Why did Rav Yosef ask Rava to touch up this pasuk? Because Rava say, what does the pasuk begin with? The need for humility. Rava, if you're going to ask questions, be humble. Be humble. Be humble. You have a question, then be receptive to an answer. If you have all the answers, don't ask the question. And if you're going to ask the question, Be specific about what it is that you're asking and be mindful of other people's time. I will say, by the way, you know what the godless of this is? The godless of this is Rav Yosef never directly admonished Rava. So I will say sometimes the best way to give Musar, right? Every parent knows this, right? You can't, a parent has to give Musar to a child. That's a parent's obligation. If you always give Musar over every single thing, you'll run the risk of really destroying your relationship with your child. So there's a balance. Some things there has to be direct Musar, and sometimes a parent has to learn the art of indirect Musar. The ability to say certain things that hopefully a child is going to understand what the parent is saying without coming straight out. It allows the message to get across. It also sometimes allows the dignity of the child to be preserved. Again, it only works with older children who perhaps are a bit more sophisticated to understand the Ramizah. And again, it's not just with children. Sometimes it happens in a marriage. Sometimes it happens in a friendship. It can happen in a variety. But the ability to kind of show a person what they've done wrong without actually hitting them over the head with it, right, and being able to preserve their dignity is such a powerful tool. I will say, what else do you see from here? What else do you see from here? You see from here that Rava understood that he did something wrong and he owned it. I will say, I find that often in life when we do something wrong, I will say, well, what happens? Let's be honest. What happens when we do something wrong in life? More often than not, even when we're confronted, when we do something wrong, what do? We double down. I didn't do anything wrong. Right? And then, I even get offended that someone thought I did something wrong. Right? So we double down on it. We double down instead of just owning it. Okay, I did something wrong. It happens. I'm a human being. I said something offensive. I did something offensive. I acted in a way that I shouldn't have acted. I will say the godless of this. Listen, I just want to show you what's happening over here. Rava did something wrong. And instead of deflecting, because we spend so much time deflecting, I didn't do anything wrong. Let me give you the 27 reasons why I did not do something wrong. I'm going to give you the Rashi and the Tosas as to why it's not wrong. We spend so much time deflecting instead of just owning. I did something wrong. Okay, I'm a human being. I have shortcomings. I have shortfalls. I did something wrong. Just own it. The godless over here is that Rava owned it. That's part one. The godless here is Rav Yosef didn't hit him over the head with it. Right? Instead, Rav Yosef said, okay, Rava, thank you for coming. Tell me, give me the pshat in this pasuk if you don't mind. Right? Thank you for the wine. Give me the pshat in the pasuk. And I will say, that's the end of the conversation. You want to know how to make shalom in Klal Yisrael? Number one, if you do something wrong, own it. Be a Rava. Number two, if someone wronged you, don't hold it over them. Be a Rav Yosef. If you need to communicate to them, try to do it in a nuanced way. Allow them to save their dignity. Don't make them feel like a piece of garbage, especially if they're taking the ownership over what they did wrong. Let them own it. Right? If you need to point something out, do it in a nuanced fashion, which allows them to preserve their dignity. And what I will say, this story is a story that brings Mashiach. If we're a Rava and we own it, and we're a Rav Yosef, don't hold things over people. Just let it go. If you have to express it in a nuanced fashion, this is how we bring Mashiach. Be a Rava, be a Rav Yosef, and Geula Krava Lava. Tanya, Hanodim in Dagan Asher Apapula Mitzri. Person goes ahead and makes a neder from Dagan, right? I will say, now remember again, how do we translate Dagan? Dagan means anything that is piled, called Mili Di'idkun, right? Anything that's piled. Asher Apapula Mitzri Yavish. Person is asr even in dry pula mitzri umuter balach, but he's permitted to go and eat moist pula mitzri umuter ba'orez v'cholka v'tigris v'tisni. And he's also permitted to go and eat orez. Rabosai is rice, right? Cholka, tigris, and tisni are all split grains of wheat, split kernels. So again, there's not like a lumdus in here. These are just items that are not piled. Remember again, dagan refers to any type of produce that is normally piled. These items are not piled. And therefore, again, they're not a problem. Hanodim in peros hashana. A person makes a neder not to eat peros hashana, right? Which literally means, again, I will say the fruit of the year. So aser b'chol peros hashana. So he's aser with any peros that grew that year. Umuter, b'gedim, u'b'tzloim, but he's permitted to eat goats or kids, chalav, u'beitzim, milk and eggs, gozlos, pigeons, v'im avar. So we'll say, because why? Because again, those items are not considered to be peros. Not considered to be peros. V'im amar gidulei shana alai, But if a person says anything that grew this year is asr to me, asr b'kulon, then I'm not allowed to eat anything. Why? I will say why. Because all of these things, what? Grew this year. See, peros has a connotation of an actual pre. Versus gidusha, things that grew this year, literally means anything that grew. Hanoda min peros haaretz, person made an neder not to eat peros haaretz, asr b'chol peros haaretz. He's not permitted to eat any of the peros of the earth. Umutar, barisi lati. This is very interesting. Umutar, bekimen upitrios. He's allowed to eat mushrooms and truffles. Mushrooms and truffles. The Rabbi said, what's the pshat? What's the pshat? Bim amar gidule karka alai. But if he said something that grew from the ground, the Rabbi says it's interesting. There's peros haaretz. So peros haaretz includes everything that grows from the ground, except for mushrooms and truffles. If he said gidule karka, Shabbos says it's interesting. So not fruit of the ground, but things that grow from the ground. Aser v'kulun. He's even aser in mushrooms and truffles. I says the Gemara Brieli or Minhi al davar sheyidula min haaretz omer shakol miyeh b'dvaro. We'll say something that doesn't grow from the ground. You make the bracha of shahakol. V'tanya. What are examples of this? Al hamelach. Melach is salt. Zamis is salt water. Valkimin pitrios. Mushrooms and truffles. Omer shakol miyeh b'dvaro. Right? The Bible says, you say shakol. So what do you see from here? You see that mushrooms and truffles are not gidule karka. They don't grow from the ground. Amar Abaye, no. Mirva rabo me'ara. So mirbu raba me'ara. Menek me'avira. Yankiva lo me'ara. Abaye says like this. These items grow from the ground, or they grow attached to the ground, but they do not derive their nutrients from the soil. Instead, ultimately, again, they derive their nutrients from the air. So but the Mishnah says something that doesn't grow from the ground. Tani al davar shein yonik min haaretz. Shabbos say when it comes to brachas, so something that does not derive its nutrients from the ground, you make a shahakol. So mushrooms and truffles, even though they grow from the ground, because they do not derive their nutrients from the ground, therefore they get the bracha of shahakol and not the bracha of borei peri hadon. I will say that is indeed halacha l'maisa. That is halacha l'maisa. I will say, but again, going back to Nedarim, if a person goes ahead and makes a nodar min peros haaretz, he's asur from everything and mutar in mushrooms and truffles. But if he says gedule karka alai, interestingly enough, mushrooms and truffles are still considered to be gedule karka. Incredible. We'll say that's how they speak in the Mishnah. HaMishnah. Hanoda min aksos. Very interesting case. Person makes a neder from clothing. Ksos. So what's the halacha? Mutar besak ubiyariya ubichamila. So it's very interesting. So a person makes a neder not to wear clothing. Ksos, what he calls ksos. So I will say, what are you permitted to wear? Sak is sackcloth. Yiriya and chamila. So yiriya bose means a curtain. Rashi says chamila is ke'ein yiriya. So I will say, the chap over here with this chamila and yiriya is, these are thicker material. Like you can imagine like a curtain type material. These are thicker material, so it's not clothing. So what it means is you make a neder not to wear ksos. Ultimately, again, you could wrap yourself in this chamila and yuriya. Omar konam semer alai. Person says konam semer, right? So ultimately, again, konam semer ola alai. Person says I make a neder that I'm not going to have any wool come upon me. Mutter lis kasos begizei semer. He is permitted to cover himself with wool shearings. Because I say the assumption over here is that semer really refers ultimately again to malbush, to clothing, to wool clothing, and therefore again wool shearings is not considered to be wool clothing. Therefore he could cover himself with this. Hapishtan ola alai. Similarly again, if a person says I make a neder about that no flax should come upon me, mutar lehis kasos ba'anitze pishtan. Once again he could cover himself with stalks of flax. Because again, the assumption is that the neder includes flax clothing, not stalks of flax. So we'll stop over here for today. Well, I know right in the middle of Mishnah. We'll pick up with Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda is going to give a very important qualifying klal. We're right on track. Let's say shkoyach. Beautiful sukkah today. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a great day, everyone. Lichtige Chanukah.